life in 3 dimensions got me bent and got me twisting. I know I done said a lot, but I should probably stop pretending. I don't really hold the key and I can't really push a button. I just step up to the mic and try my very best to bust it, but I ran out of breath. It's tight in my chest, my feet just might fail. I can't stand the pressure.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Racially Speaking. I'm your regular host, David Phipps. And yes, joining me, as he often does, but not enough, it's my prodigal co-host, a.k.a. Mr. Michael B. Phelps, a.k.a. Aquaman, a.k.a. Mr. 2 Chains.
That's too many
social justice cowboy himself, Mr. Wyatt John Mark Walker. What's going on, brother?
Hey, man, the social justice cowboy applies. The other ones don't. Michael B. Phelps. What's up, man? It's good to be back.
I'm going to keep adding to it.
Okay, keep adding to it.
I got to. Well, also, you know, it's kind of rapport with the listeners because if you have to listen to get all the jokes, I'm just going to keep,
that's true. That's true.
I'm going to keep doing it.
Aquaman, I wasn't the one who jumped in the water, but I'll take that nickname.
Yeah, it's a swimming thing, you know. It's a good name.
Yeah, because I did swim. Yeah.
Of course, social justice cowboy will always take the cake for the best one. I think I'm proud of that one.
Yeah, that's me too. I'm proud of you for that one.
So what you been up to? Happy New Year's 2024. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Yeah. Happy New Year. Up to the same. Go to the gym, playing video games, hanging out with my wife and kids. Nothing too exciting.
Did you get any new video games?
No, I'm playing Pokemon. Pokemon on the Switch. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I put it down for a while, but the DLC, I've been playing some DLC, so it's fun. I never grew out of that Pokemon, my love for Pokemon from the time I was in fifth grade when we couldn't have it at church because it was banned. I love Pokemon. Yeah, because they're like spirits and stuff. And they evolved. It was bad. So, but now I love it. Yeah,
evolution, man. Yeah, gotta stay away from that.
That's the kind of church I grew up in. Yeah, man. Yeah, but
I think it's funny because do you play Pokemon Go?
I did when it came out. I don't anymore.
Okay, so we went through a phase where we let Ollie do that on our phone for a while.
Oh, that's fun.
Caitlin may or may not have done it when it came out as well. But weren't churches often the places where you go for battles?
Pokestops, yeah.
Pokestops, that's it.
Gyms and Pokestops, they were, yeah.
Well, that makes it funnier to me then.
Yeah, it kind of came back around on those churches that wouldn't let Pokemon. They were just roaming outside their churches.
I'm just picturing your church and the pastors looking out the window like those heathens. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, so I'm doing well.
Yeah.
What you up to? How are you? How are you doing?
Yeah. Well, so are you guys healthy? Because I'm coming off strep. 2 of the kids had strep.
Oh, man.
Our littlest had RSV.
Oh no.
So the whole shebang. Sickness hits us. Sickness specifically has hit the Phipps household over the major holidays over the last few years, like clockwork. So I'm happy to be on the upswing and feeling good now, but it's just, man, I would love to catch a break on a holiday.
Yeah, for real. That's rough. Yeah, we dodged. We were able to do all the holiday stuff and dodge some colds and stuff. Sniffles here and there, but we're good.
Yeah. Honestly, it's been so long. This seems like it was a long time ago it was since me and you podcasted, but I'd say a bright spot was being able to catch up with, our families catch up back right before Thanksgiving. We spent some time.
Yeah.
In Richmond with you guys for a few hours.
We're over at our spot. Yeah, you're over at our spot. Hanging out. That was a good time. Yeah, it was fun. What did I make? Chili? Did we have chili?
Chili's delicious.
That's my award-winning chili. Yeah.
Award-winning, really?
Well, I entered it in a couple competitions, small competitions with my work team, and I won one of them. So
there's got to be a nickname there.
Chili? Nah.
Gotta be nickname. I'm gonna work on one
for my chili. No, okay. You work on it. But yeah, that was fun.
Well,
what was it
that we put in it?
Did I put in my chili?
Well, there was something that was kind of unique that you had us put in it, and I can't remember now. For us, I think we do avocado.
I eat it. I eat it over rice. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that was great. Over rice.
I eat it over rice. Yeah,
never done.
I really like it. I really like it over spaghetti noodles, but that's my like Cincinnati, Ohio, when it's coming out. Yeah,
it's interesting.
It's not. Yeah, something we do in Ohio. But
okay.
Yeah, I always eat it over rice. I don't know. I don't know. I'm sure it happens other places, but that's my dad's side of the family.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
chili over spaghetti.
Chili over rice. We loved it. I forgot. I'd have to remind Caitlin that's what we got to do next time because we've had it several times since.
Yeah. Chili over rice.
Yeah. Listeners, you're getting all this tons of advice from John Mark, the man of many talents.
Delicious. Got to do it.
Chili over rice.
Oh, man.
That's good.
This is random. Today I had Qdoba. You ever have Qdoba?
I don't think I have, to be honest.
I didn't even know that they were still in existence, but I was in the airport. I was in the Atlanta airport, and I was looking for some food, and I was like, I'm going to give Qdoba a shot. And it was subpar to Chipotle, just like always. It was just one step down. I was like, man, I wish I was eating Chipotle.
How do you feel? How do you feel about Moe's?
Moe's is good. Moe's is different. It's not Chipotle. Yeah. It's not Qdoba. It's kind of over on the side. It's like I don't want delicious. I'm gonna go to Moe's. Welcome to Moe's.
Yeah, welcome to Moe's.
I think they have like the endless chips. Last I was at Moe's, they had like bottomless chips. That was nice.
I forgot about that. What I always remember is the queso. Queso's pretty good.
And
Moe's, yeah, because I grew up in Norfolk and we didn't have Chipotle. Like they got Chipotle since I've been
got Moe's down there
away. Yeah, so it was just always Moe's. Yeah, I think it was too much, and I can't even eat it anymore.
Really too much.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah. I'm in Radford where we have nothing, but we have had a Moe's for a long time, and I don't even go there. We now have a Chipotle.
You have to have like a Mexican restaurant though.
Lots of Mexican restaurants. We finally do have a Chipotle.
Authentic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever done Qdoba.
It's okay. This is my announcement. Nobody needs to do Qdoba. Just go to Chipotle.
Interesting. Bold move. Qdoba.
Yeah. It was worth a shot. It was either that or Chick-fil-A. I was like, I'll save the Lord's chicken for another day. And I went Qdoba.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, like I said, new year, new us. No, just kidding. It's really the opposite. I wouldn't say we've ever been ones to do the obligatory New Year's end of the year reflections or New Year's resolutions, at least on the podcast. I don't know. Have you ever made a New Year's resolution? I literally don't think I ever have.
Once I made one to swear more. I felt like I was getting
swear more.
So I wanted to start using specifically the S word, which I'm not going to use because family-friendly show, but specifically the S word. And I failed. I completely failed. It didn't enter my vocabulary that year. So, yeah. So that was one, but I don't typically do resolutions.
Well, that's a great segue because some of what I wanted to do today is, not do a resolution, but reflect a little bit on the podcast, on the show that we've done for, John Mark, I don't know if you knew this month, it'll be 3 years. 3 years since I started this on kind of a solo-ish endeavor, and then 2-ish years since I brought you on and you helped me out. So, man, it's been a minute. It's been a minute since we've been doing this. So I wanted to reflect a little bit, but I mean, should we combine your previous New Year's resolution and become an explicit show? Is that what you're saying?
See how many times we can say the S word this episode.
Yeah.
No, I think we're good.
Yeah. We probably shouldn't do that. Let's stay family friendly.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, I think your mom listens, right?
She does.
Yeah.
3 years. 3 years of the pod. I don't know if it seems like time has flown or time has crept along. I'm sure it's felt one or the other at different times. Look, why, I guess it's a question for me, but it's kind of for you because, I mean, you decided to come on board as well. I'd love to just ask each other, why did we start this whole thing? And how do you think it's gone? Like, let's assess
let me ask you a question. Why did you start the pod, and how's it gone or going?
Sounds a lot like what I just said.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So tell me about it. Why did you start the podcast?
Yeah. So, literally, like this month, I didn't intend to do it. I know I said never do New Year's resolutions, but just kind of coincidentally, I've been working on it for a while and released it 3 years ago in January this month. And yeah, I could take up probably a whole episode on just this one question, but here's kind of the bare bones. So, racially speaking, probably evokes different things from different people, even here in the title. But look, ultimately, I started it because I felt like there was a need for it, not necessarily a need for me, like to hear my voice, like I'm, a profound person or person with knowledge or anything, but this was needed, in a sense of it didn't exist. I'm not saying there's not tons and tons of good podcasts out there or other people or other things that are having these types of conversations, but I felt like it was missing in the spaces I was in. And I felt like it was an urgent thing that I personally was looking for and couldn't find. And I also knew many other people that needed it. So what I mean is, so do the math, 3-ish years ago, 2020, 2021, things are very different. A lot of racial tension, racial reckoning, and even preceding that, even you can go all the way back 2015, even with contentious issues going on. I just felt what I mean by spaces I was in. I work, I quasi work in academia on college campus, and then also in ministry and in church setting. I felt like there was not adequate helpful conversation happening about specifically justice and even more specifically racial justice. I felt like that was really, really, really important. And so I felt like it needed to be there. And, this is very clear, I'm sure, but I knew that there was other podcasts out there and stuff, but I felt like somebody who actually didn't have a huge platform could be valuable in this space, like myself. Like I would always encourage people to listen to the bigger name people, like a Jamar Tisby, or a Truce Table or something like that with Christina Edmondson and Dekemini. But I felt like somebody who had no platform like me, it would be valuable to hear conversations that I was having with people like yourself, John Mark, and other people we've had on the podcast. And I just felt myself having conversations that maybe me and you would have, or me and my friend Zach would have often, who was on the first couple episodes with me and kind of helped me get this thing off the ground, actually. I feel like we would talk about what we were going through and what was going on in our country with race and justice and stuff, and especially in Christian spaces and whatnot. And then I leave those conversations feeling like, wait, this is actually the type of conversation that people need to hear, but no one's around when it's just us talking. And we're not able to have these types of conversations when there are people around. And so we need to create our own space. So that's a little peek, behind the curtain of like what it looks like when people say like we needed to create our own space. And I wasn't saying like we need to create our own space so that like I can get a megaphone and say whatever I want or like be divisive or something. I was like, no. Like I need to create a space because it doesn't exist, and it doesn't exist for a lot of the same people who are in my, my situation or look like me or whatnot. And so, and then just logistically, podcasting for my personality seemed like it fit ish. Like I don't consider myself a very like, a gifted public speaker. And this is kind of like a public speaking thing, but we're not in public while we're recording.
Right.
And so, it was kind of a win-win, and it wasn't high pressure. Like, oh my gosh, I'm like in front of a huge live audience, like even on radio or something, it's like, okay, worst comes to worst, I'll never release what we record, and by God's grace,
you're not going to tell them about our live tour. You're going to tell them about our live tour coming up.
If someone wants to front some capital, we would love to do a live tour. Yeah,
I'd go. But then we'd have to release it because it'd be live. It'd have to be released.
Also true. Anyway, was that was clear as mud answer for you, John Mark?
No, that was a good answer. So what were some of the events, if you take us back to the beginning, what were some of the things that, I guess, precipitated you starting this? Look at that word, that prompted you to start this podcast. I mean, I'm taking us back to like 2020 and the civil rights moment that we had. Kind of flashpoint, right? That in the wake of George Floyd's death, which was, his death was preceded by Breonna Taylor's murder and Ahmaud Arbery's murder, and then so many other killings of Black and brown people. So that I have to assume that was part of it, right? The motivation, what was happening in 2020. But what are some other things that stick out in your mind over the years that, I don't know, either kept it going, kept the necessity in front of you, or even prompted you to want to start it?
Sure. Well, I don't remember exactly the year or time where I started to feel like I need to be more vocal, or I started to see the disconnect in how to have conversations on racial reconciliation around my circles. But, for sure, and I've been pretty clear about this from the get-go, but would be when former President Trump kind of announced his running and candidacy type stuff, and seeing not just that happened, but seeing people's reactions, Christians. And, I was never super, political or cared that much about, stuff like elections and whatnot. I was, quasi-informed, but, I didn't necessarily feel the weight of how voting affects people or policies affect people's lives personally, or I wasn't just in proximity enough to people who I could see, oh, if this person is making these laws or rules or regulations, it's going to be bad for you, or the opposite. Like it's going to just make you richer or protect what you have at the expense of others. And so my eyes were just open. There's nothing I did. It was just observations. And it wasn't just observations that were hard to see. It was more people's reactions in the way that I feel like I was taught and conditioned to think would not be so. And for example, like I never thought that speaking up about racism, and this is very naive looking back, but the Lord has met me in my naivety through it all. But I think I knew racism was bad, like most people would profess, and that people would agree it's not a good thing. And so that, to me, that's like bottom shelf material. And so I think I viewed it as, I didn't view it as something that needed to be delved into deeply, if that makes sense, John Mark. And so I think I just existed most of my life feeling like, oh, these people, I grew up around mostly white people, mostly white Christians. I think I just operated with the belief that, oh, I'm around these types of people, I'm safe. And if anything racist happens, like obviously everyone around me is, on the same page and agrees that all of this is bad. We all agree on all of these issues.
Right.
It sounds so naive saying it out loud right now, and that, it's strange. But then when
I don't know if I would say that you're naive for thinking that. I mean, I feel like I probably felt in a similar situation, growing up in a predominantly white church. That was just the community I was in. And like nobody was overtly mean to me. Like nobody was saying, get to the back of the bus, or, writing words or calling me words or physically assaulting me. Right. So, I mean, maybe naive is a word, but I think just not having yet matured. Right. I would even hesitate to say immature, but just not having yet matured in our views of what racism is and how it's displayed. And it's this racism is such a broad term that it encompasses the worst of slavery and the Ku Klux Klan, Nazi Germany, caste system in India. It's like the worst of how you treat people, to also just like indifference, you're never going to get promoted because I have a preference for people who are like me, like just subtle things of how we relate to each other. So it's the extreme. So I think it's just, we had to mature in our understanding of how we interacted in the worlds that we came up in, and I think that's part of it. Of this is that we have this platform allows us to have more nuanced conversation around not just when the police officer goes crazy, but what's the system behind, why Black people are more violently policed than white people. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I think this allows us to go deeper on those things.
Yeah. So I mean, absolutely, stuff like Trump winning 2016, and again, I was new to the whole even following an election that closely, but if you can take yourself back to 2016, like it was kind of a surprise that he won, in a sense of, from what I just outlined about how I felt, I in no way until the very end like thought he was going to win. And I wasn't, all panicky or anything like that, but it was understanding the basic, like paint with broad strokes, the classic nature of Christians who were just, Republican. If you're a Christian, you're a Republican type thing. And that was just alone a rude awakening of, I grew up around that, and I didn't necessarily think it was the worst thing, but I was just kind of like 50-50 with it. I was like, whatever, who cares? It's politics. Like, they're all the same. But then I think part of me was just like, oh, but I mean, if something's this obvious, like, Christians are good people, we're going to be on the right side.
We're not going to be for that
there's
guy.
No way we would put somebody this novice. And just the amount of Christians, not necessarily, so it wasn't all these individual conversations with people being like, oh, hey, I'm supporting Trump. It was more just the statistics, or like the overall feeling, like the lack of wanting to talk about it, the complicity, the not both siding, but the sermons they quickly turned into, we're not saved by, a president or a leader. So, we're just going to preach unity and Jesus and move on. We're not going to don't worry about what, he's saying he's going to do, or what he's saying about these types of people, and Black and brown people often, or the disadvantaged and other countries, all this stuff. And to me, I was just like, wait. All those kinds of like deers in the headlights moments where, maybe not deer in the headlights, but moments where I was just like, hold on, what are we doing here? Like, I don't think we have to have it all figured out, but I just kept being stunned and disheartened by how much further back we were than I thought we were in these conversations. I think, again, I still don't know a better word, but I just ignorantly maybe thought we were much farther along, that when something like objectively awful was being spouted off unapologetically by somebody who's like, could be in charge of like people in our country, that'd be an easy like talking point to like dismiss, but it was met with, oh, if like there's something wrong with you if you're bringing this up, or the both side proclamations from up front, and even just reading statistics that of course if you want to argue statistics, that's fine, but that 80% of white evangelical Christians, I think it was, voted for somebody like this. And then anyway, I don't want to turn this into just all the political thing, but that was a big thing that propelled me into it. And I think that started a bunch of the factions that are in the church still now, and in a lot of other circles.
Mm-hmm.
And then I mentioned when we even were starting the podcast, like our intention was me and Zach's intention was to just start it. But we kept trying to pick a time or a day to release the first episode, do the first episode. And because we didn't want to like purposely end up to be out there as like clickbait or to, exacerbate something that's going on. And we kept picking days and then something would happen. Like,
oh, really?
There'd be a huge headline and be like, gosh, I don't want it to be like, oh, we're starting it because this happened. Or like,
yeah,
we can't start it now because we didn't talk about this and it's going to be awkward that we didn't address the biggest thing going on. So it happened like it felt like 3 or 4 times. So then finally we're like, all right, we're just going to record and release what we got. And if we have to give a caveat when we release it, that's fine. And then literally like January 6th was like going on.
Oh my goodness.
Happened.
Really?
And I'm like, well,
that's
okay,
crazy.
look, we're going to read up, follow, like, we're just going to talk about it.
Yeah, it was a storm. It was a tumultuous, I don't even know how to say the word. It was, there's that word. Yeah, it was a storm. It was a stormy season. Yeah.
And so we talked about, January 6th, which we just had another anniversary of, talked about politics. I mean, 2017 Charlottesville, and obviously the, murder of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, all that, all these things that happened that were just, to me, objectively terrible, unjust things, most of which had ties to specifically racism that I couldn't believe wasn't being addressed in a more responsible way. And as part of the first question, it's not that I thought, okay, I'm the best person to do this. I'm an expert, but I wanted to use what knowledge and what quote unquote credentials I had. Because I do think it's funny because I think podcasting is interesting to me because anyone can do it, which I think is a good thing. But then anybody can do it, so it can also not be a good thing. And I'm a big believer. That's why we bring guests on, Jean-Marc. But I'm a big believer in people who have expertise. But I wanted to use this platform to use our expertise to a sense. And we're experts in some of this. I wouldn't say we're like the most expert level in racial discussions, but one, we have obviously personal stories and experiences. But the things we talk about, I feel like I felt enough pride and confidence in what we are experts in. And we've both done Christian ministry for over a decade. We've obviously, are in our mid-30s, living as Asian man, Black man in America. We were in college. We work in college spaces. And so that's quasi expertise, and then we ride the coattails of some brilliant people we bring on here. It kind of my hope is to kind of synthesize these conversations. I know that many people listening, including us, are in the church or Christians. I also wanted to make it accessible to people who might not be Christians. I've even had people on who aren't Christians, because I think that, again, this is kind of a nod at justice and a little bit of a knock on where the church is at right now. But I kept noticing that I had more in common in speaking out about justice with people that didn't identify as Christians often. And I felt like that was interesting to me. So I wanted this to be a space where we could at least have common ground talking about that stuff. And that being helpful, moving the needle as far as justice goes, even if we didn't, share the exact same religious beliefs. And that's not, I've never compromised my beliefs, never asked someone else to compromise their beliefs, but that we're on the same page with what justice could look like. And I just felt a weight of a lot of Christian spaces, to be frank, and some non, that I was a part of, not having the capability, but more often the willingness to have these conversations, especially in a way that would require responsible action. I don't know how do I do answering that. You got anything to add?
It was good. No, I don't think so. That was a good answer.
So John,
I think my next.
hold on. So I
was going to say my next question, but you go ahead.
Well, I had you, I think you're around like episode 10 or 12, somewhere in there.
Sure.
And then we kind of hit it off after that. So I'd wonder, I don't think I've ever asked you this, but I'd wonder what made you kind of latch on to listening in on the podcast and then say yes when I asked you to come on and co-host it with me.
Well, so I think you posted something about it on Instagram, which I was not on at the time, and then I got on, and then now I'm no longer on. But I think you posted about it on Instagram, and my wife found it, and we were friends, we were acquaintances, we were friends from work, and so I like listened to it. So even in my work, so I work in the cross cultural space, the DEI world, right? So I talk about diversity a lot, but sometimes it like race, culture, ethnicity. Sometimes I think now still today I spend more time corporately talking about ethnicity and culture, and less time talking about racism and racial interactions and so I felt like and feel like I need an outlet for that, right? And I think back when I was on your episode, that felt like a natural way for me to talk about things that I didn't get to talk about in work, in a way that I didn't get to talk about, but I wanted to. And I felt like it was important to talk about those justice issues. And so I was excited about your podcast. I don't remember what the topic was that you brought me on to talk about. I remember feeling like a great conversation, and then us just connecting off of the recording. Felt like a natural friendship that we built, and then being more regular, trying to be a co-host, but schedules, So that's what I remember. That's what I recall. So
yeah. I'm looking back. You were on episode 12. So listeners, go back and re-listen to that one.
Yeah, my first episode. I wasn't the social justice cowboy yet.
You weren't the social justice cowboy yet. But we talked. Oh, it looks like, hey, shout out to Esau McCauley, the Reverend Dr. Esau McCauley, who we recently had on. Oh, you talked a little bit.
Is that who we talked about? Did we talk about Reading While Black?
Reading While Black a little bit.
Okay.
And
yeah, I
don't have a super descriptive thing of what we talked about, but yeah, I remember now that we talked about Reading While Black and get them out.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's good. It's fun to walk back memory lane. My question for you though is now what do you think is the need for this? Like have we grown in society? Do we still need these conversations? Why do we? I guess a better question would be why. It's more leading. I don't think the answer is no, we don't need these conversations. But
it was actually our last episode. No.
Why? What's it like now? Yeah.
Right. I wanted to reflect on that a little bit. Like I said, when I started it, I thought there was a need. And so I would love for there not to be a need. With that said, I think we do need to answer this. Like we not have the answer, but I think we have to talk about it. I don't know how much things have changed or how much we as a people have grown since I started this. I don't mean to base that off of just how much have people grown from listening to it. I just mean like in general, these types of conversations, like the need for them to be had. So like, I do think, unfortunately, it's needed. We're headed into 2024, another election year, and it just feels like, I hope this is not the case. I keep seeing headlines of all the other podcasts that have been releasing stuff that's, a lot of them I listen to of just like, is 2024, another year? Is this a year we should fear again and all that? And like, I'm not a doomsday type person, but I just think like it sucks that it feels like, holy cow, we're here again. Like it feels like we're not, it's not COVID, but it feels like things are just as, if not more in some ways, as contentious with these issues that we've been talking about. And I'm not sure what to think about it. Like I do think it's needed because, like I said, I think a lot of the same things are still happening, if not more so. But I don't, again, it's called Racially Speaking. I specifically felt like race is something that was consistently taken out of context, still is, but was kind of sidestepped or avoided whenever something was going on. And so I really felt like, called and purposeful in focusing on those things, not with the goal of forcing it, like, oh, well, let me figure out how I can make this about race. No, it was like, no, how can I talk about the racial issues that are behind all this when no one wants to talk about it, honestly. So I don't know, like maybe down the road a name change, who knows? But for right now, yeah, I mean, what do you think? Because I'm not sure. I think as far as our podcast has gone, we've done a good job in a sense of, I don't think we've stretched ourselves to talk about too many different things, but we stayed faithful to try and talk about things that are important, not sidestep things, but also not feel like we need to speak up about everything or that we're experts in everything. Right. And so hopefully that's been helpful, listeners. But moving forward, like there's plenty of conversations I know we're going to have, and plenty of people we're going to talk to, but I'm not like, I would trade all that for me being able to have a long list of things that I can see not necessarily directly correlating to us, but changing like out in the real world, like that this void wouldn't still be there, like in Christian spaces. That what I'm getting at is I just see too much of this move on mentality, like, oh my gosh, thank God that it's not 2020 anymore. We can just move on and let's work on repairing all this division and tension that we've had over the last 3 or 4 years. And to me, I'm asking myself, or ask people who I hear say that, I'm like, well, how, like, what are you or what are we moving on from or healing from? How are we healing? Who is healing? And like, what are we repairing? And I think too often the answer is, well, time, that kind of time heals all wounds mentality. It's like, well, to an extent, but what actual things have we done that now things are different? And too much has not happened in my opinion. And I don't know if you agree with all that, John Mark, that it's like, why is so much still the same then? Like, why is stuff still exactly the same?
I think I agree. Not much has substantially changed. I think there's still a lot of dehumanizing rhetoric. I think people grew tired, right? I think there's a verse that says, "Let us not grow weary of doing good." And as a Christian, I think if we're not sustained by the Lord, by Jesus, by God in this type of work, then we're not going to keep doing it. We're going to be like, it's easier to just live with whatever we're living with, however we're living, right? Instead of stirring things up. I don't think that's a bad, like, I think you could use it as a good phrase to draw attention to injustice, racial injustice, to draw attention to people who say things and dehumanize others with their words and actions that are reprehensible, that they shouldn't say those things, right? Words have consequences, actions have consequences. You aren't the problem when you call something out. Now there are ways you shouldn't call things out in good ways and bad ways, but just by simply saying, hey, look at that car wreck, it doesn't mean you're the one who's causing the car wreck. Maybe someone should take that driver's license away. It doesn't mean that you're the cause of the bad driving, right? So so I think this type of platform, what we do, is still very needed, because I think there will continue to be outpourings of racism, and then there's also the more subtle forms that we just become accustomed to, because when was it like the frog in the pot? Things just boil around you, and it's like, I see it, I experience it. It's getting hotter and hotter. I'm not going to jump out or say anything, right? So I think we with this platform are able to point things out and say, look at that. Does that line up with how we as people should live? Does it line up with how God would have us live, with who God is? Does it line up with love and justice? And if not, should you really be behind that? So yeah, I don't think things have changed, but it's interesting. I was thinking about like the civil rights movement, right? And then when I think about that, like my mind goes back to voting rights, women's suffrage, and then it goes back to like slavery, just the history of our country. And in every generation, there is a group of people who wanted to bring about social justice change. And in every generation, there is a group of people who label them as something negative, like they take the term whatever they call them, and it's negative. So in slavery, it was abolitionists, and Christians would use that and be like, "Oh, you're just an abolitionist," as we use social justice warrior today, right? And it's like, consider where you would stand with the words that you use today. Where would you be all throughout history? Which side would you be? Would you be for justice, or would you be for the way things are and the abusive power structures that are? And so we need people who will say things, and this podcast is one of those spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. So we recently, as we said, had the Reverend Dr. Esau McCauley on the show. And then, I'm just going to credit ourselves with launching him into like a tour, a press circuit for his book, because he showed up on all the other podcasts.
All the major ones,
right after us. Ours. I mean, so I'm glad we got his name out there for him. I'm sure it helped him a lot. But
little known author, right?
Yeah, absolutely. He showed up on Dr. Jamar Tisby's podcast, not Pass the Mic, but Footnotes, the one that he does solo typically. We both listened to that. It's a fantastic listen. They said something on there that I thought was interesting. I guess it was Jamar, but they mentioned this sentiment or this phrase: people who speak about people who are speaking about race in Christian spaces typically either burn out, get pushed out, or sell out. So they kind of talked about that kind of sentiment. So people speaking up about race in Christian spaces either burn out, get pushed out, or sell out was their observation. And so they're kind of talking how, the two of them have been doing it for a very long time, obviously. But, that stuck out to me because we've been doing it personally a lot longer than this, but on this podcast, let's just say for 3 years now. How would you, and for the audience, John Mark, our listeners, like, how would you say we have done with that or are doing with that? So burn out, get pushed out, or sell out. I thought that'd be a good thing to reflect on. So this is with the backdrop that we have succeeded with those three things. Like we're still here. I guess it doesn't. Let's not assume that. Let's talk about it. Have we done this?
Well, we're still here, but I mean, we were in communities that we're no longer in because we were talking about these things, right? Especially, right? So, so I've left spaces because we tried to pursue talking about racial justice and it wasn't received well. So then I moved to another space. So I think that's a form of being pushed out, right? And then the sellout thing, right? So the civil rights movement moment in 2020 was like this flash fire, right? It was hot. Things were burning up, right? And everybody was paying attention. The world was like, what's going on? Like everyone was paying attention to it. And then now it feels like it's kind of calmed down and it's still hot, but it's not, super high temperature, burning everything that comes close to it, right? And so people are like not paying as close attention to it. People aren't talking about it as much. And um, I don't know if that calls for a different way to approach it. Uh, I don't know if we've changed. I don't know if I'm speaking for myself. I don't feel like I've grown any more tired of speaking about racial justice or for racial justice. I'm no longer pursued as much to do it, to speak about it. I find myself speaking more about culture and cultural awareness, which is adjacent to it, but it doesn't directly go after, racial justice. So, or racial unity. So, that's something I've noticed. But my conviction is still talk about racism, talk about history, and talk about how God would have us care for each other. So I don't feel like I've sold out.
So what would it look like?
I might look like I've slowed down or something. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think I would attribute slowing down more to the burnout thing, but I see what you're saying. But for people that might be confused even with the sellout part of that sentence. So, I mean, what would it look like, say we did sell out? Like, what do you think that would look like?
We'd be interviewing Candace Owens. If I'm gonna name drop,
okay.
Right? We'd be like,
that's an extreme example.
I used to talk about racism, but I don't think it exists. I think everybody's individually responsible or something, stuff like that. We'd be like opposite of what we talked about.
So why would that be?
Be our counter arguments.
Why would that be selling out? I'm putting you on the spot. Let's just break it down for people.
Yeah, I don't know. That might be more of a betrayal, but another sellout would just be like, hey, if you stop talking about it, all these good things will happen for you, right? And and then we're just complicit with. We're silent on what we would have talked about, and we're complicit with what's going on because we're benefiting from something or another, right? That would be selling out.
Right. The benefiting factor is the X factor to me. The benefiting element. I mean, that's kind of the epitome of, selling out. Yeah. I mean, I would take it even not a step further, but a step back even of like, it's been a little more subtle for me when I think about this, because I was never going to do that. I know you're not saying we would either. Like, I was never going to go the Candace Owens route or anything and avoid talking about race on racially speaking. Man, to me, and this is a lot more subtle, but we're just staying committed to having the honest conversation. Like I don't say it every time now, but like I say, and it might sound kind of generic, but in our description or our whatever tagline, slogan of the podcast, just honest conversation. And real conversation about racial justice, right? And so, and I'd even add to that leads to change, it leads to action. And so, the unfortunate thing is that these things are kind of all synthesized together if you're committed to it. The burnout, sell out, or get pushed out, like it's kind of a fluid thing. And so, we're kind of navigating that. And so, something I'd say that for me, I really didn't want to sell out. And it was a learning curve as I started it, because I started to realize, as much as I'd like to have even certain people on who I might even be really close to, I've kept this place this mic pretty sacred and close to the chest. Like, I'm not just going to throw somebody on here. It's never been a place where I'm like, let's get somebody on here that we can like have some big disagreement with. I think there's a time and place for that maybe down the road, but it's been a place more of healing and safety and liberation is what I wanted to err on the side of. And, I just, unless I've never had somebody on here. I don't think I've done best I could. I've not had anybody on here that I haven't really been 99.9 to 100% sure that we have the same intent on our conversation. Like I've never brought somebody on here that I'm like, I hope they don't get on here, and then we kind of disagree with the whole backdrop of why we're on here. I don't mean like we've had people on here that I probably disagree with a little bit with, like maybe some practical things, or maybe even their a little bit of their heart posture towards something. But overall, I wasn't going to have somebody on here that there's people on here. This is a sellout thing. Like there's you and I both, and you know what I mean, John Mark, like plenty of people that would for sure get a lot of listens and downloads that we could have on here and that we could facilitate a conversation. It might be fine, but it would get away from what I just talked about. Like it wouldn't be the kind of conversation that if I'm a person of color, especially in a Christian space, that needs to be heard and seen, that I'm going to tune into. It would get away from that really quickly. And I remember early-ish on in the podcast, I'd have to look back. Maybe I'll do that as I'm talking, but I didn't sit down and say, okay, this is my intent. But I realized I was, let's see, I must have been 30 or so episodes in. I hadn't had like any white males on the pod. And I realized that like late, I was like, I didn't intend. It's like, okay, I'm going to do this and not have any white guys on. And I know a lot of white guys. I'm close to a lot. And this isn't a specific knock on anybody specifically whatsoever, but it was an innate like outpouring of, there's something like I'm talking to my black and brown friends and acquaintances and women that are just in my circles that that just are the innate ones that I think of or think of me and what we're doing on the podcast and want to be part of it. And to me, that's just indicative of history when it comes to these conversations. That not that no white men have been part of it, but it's just right now where we're in, the times we're in right now, that's just the type of people who we find ourselves more in solidarity with, who are for us. And I would love that to not be so. Like, I really, really, really would. But to me, I'll be honest, like that's what I think about that I've avoided selling out. Like I would love if there was like a infinite list of all the people we know who are, white male pastors or white male campus ministers, all this stuff that I'd be, oh man, I can't wait to have them on and share like how like their passion for this. But there's just not a long list of ones that I know without beyond a shadow of a doubt that are committed to it. And it comes full circle. That's why I feel called to keep doing this. I think episode 32 was the first time I had my friend and pastor, but Vince on, who is one of, if not the person I've been closest to with a lot of these conversations. Like that has a white young male pastors showed nothing but solidarity and understanding. And he's part of what I'll say about a relationship like that is he is aware through and through of not just how to show solidarity, but why somebody like me, somebody like you, John Mark, would be reluctant to trust him. And that's like something that I feel like a lot of people are just sometimes unaware that is a necessity, but are often unwilling to embrace. So I don't know. You got anything to add to that? I mean, I think with the burnout, do I get tired of this sometimes? Not podcasting, but like that I committed to doing this with my life, like speaking up about this. Sure. Yeah. Like it would be easier not to.
Yeah. I feel like we've talked about that before where like if we could go back and not talk about it and not be aware of it, how much easier would that be? Just like, blissfully ignorant to the hidden racism around us. Like that was easier, sure. Be like, oh yeah, that's just, two individuals, one abusing another. There's nothing systemic about that. That would be easier, but that's not reality. So we can't live in that, It's not wise to close our eyes.
Definitely too late now.
Yeah. So I hear what you're saying about, having your pastor friend on and, so where does that leave us again, going forward? What do you think the future holds? Like, have we grown enough to have people like that on? You know what I mean? Like, or even just, are we growing in conversations off of the mic, off of recording with people who wouldn't have previously had these conversations or been aware of hidden racism around them?
Yeah. I think it's both. I think that me and you have changed in a way of like, we've grown and could have more of those conversations on here with people we might not be quite like positive that it's going to be like we just outlined, but can have maybe conversations where the gap is a little wider and we need to have some nuanced conversation for us to learn as well, but then to be okay with, because for a while I was just, I was not in a place to want to teach anybody anything. You know what I mean? Like, and so I feel like I'm a little bit better spot with, I don't say better, but like different spot with that and could do it. But like you said earlier on in this episode, I think it feels like we're moving a little bit away from having that opportunity, if that makes sense. Like I think people are wanting to move on and not dive into this anymore.
Yeah.
And okay, here, I'm gonna be honest. My fear is that I think this platforms like this. Again, I'm not solely elevating our podcast, but like I think this thing is needed. I'm worried that this is going to be needed more than more than ever, like more than I know or that we know, in a detrimental, like in a bad way. Like I'm grieved at thinking about how much I think it will be needed. And I'm not going to go off on a tangent right now, but I think one obvious elephant in the room is like, we mentioned 2016, 2020 contentious presidential elections. 2024 is the next presidential election year. And I know a lot of people have checked out and honestly probably don't even know or aren't following super closely. I wouldn't say I'm following super closely, but perhaps closer than some of you listening. But former President Trump, there's a high, not like a like funny thing he could run again. Like there's a huge chance he will be the president again. And that is just such like an indicative thing of that's what I mean when things have not changed. Like that is literally like one of the biggest things that should be baffling. And in some ways it's like you can be cynical and be like, well, it's not, of course, like things are just going to get worse, blah, blah, blah. But I think I don't even want to cop out there. Like, I just want to say like that is the kind of thing that you have to be turning some level of a blind eye to say things have gotten better, things are changing when we're right back in this situation. And just all the things that are at play with that reality are so crazy. And if you're turned off by me saying that, like, this might not be the place for you. I'll just be honest. Cause I think that's like again, a very low level thing to say that is nuts. Like, yeah, former president with everything that he brought, every which way. And that is currently like one of the biggest is being prosecuted in every like is a criminal right now. Like it's crazy, like, or alleged, whatever, like
alleged. Yeah. Accused.
It's so crazy. Like it's extremely likely he could be the president again. It is like crazy. Anyway, lots of stuff happening still aside from that. And with that I just think like, I wish it wasn't true, but I think there's just going to be a lot to continue to have to unpack. Yeah. Not because you and I, John Mark, want to like have a place to air out like our thoughts and like get followers by any means, but just that it's a place to like, I know it's not good for my mental health to not have a place to listen or to talk about this kind of stuff. And I know other people, I don't know about you. I mean, it's a weird place to be in because it's affirming and it's also sad to regularly have people seek you out because they don't going through the same thing as like you and I mentioned that we've gone through. Yeah. And needing guidance because, like I said, it's not where it should be. Like I've helped give counsel. I say give counsel, not counsel because I'm not a counselor, but give counsel to people that are in the exact same spot I've left, or situate, or like a similar situation where it's like, well, anyway, that'd be a whole nother episode. But it's affirming because it's like it's affirms that things we've done in the past, maybe we're right, even if they felt lonely and wrong or iffy at times. But it's also sad to think like, why is the same thing still happening to people? Why are the same voices still being silenced in places where we thought we did a bunch of work to make sure that doesn't happen? I don't know. You got anything to add to that bit?
Yeah.
Do you think we should change anything, or what do you think moving forward for 2024?
No, I think we should keep talking to the issues we've been talking about and about the issues we've been talking about, and inviting people on who have a heart for justice and unity and doing what is right, and upholding what is right. Yeah. I don't know what the future holds and what the election holds. It certainly feels like we're still as polarized as we were. It certainly feels like we haven't learned lessons about dehumanizing language around immigrants or other people of color, anyone who's different from us. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, what you said about the potential return of the president is true. It was a very real possibility. But even if not, kind of those attitudes, the sentiments, the things he put out there still linger. And so either way, we're facing that. You know what I mean? We're facing subtle and overt racism. So, yeah, I feel like either way, we're walking into a similar future. Yeah. So, like I said, still needed. We still got to be here, still talking about these things, still having guests on who care, still sharing resources. That's what I think we still need to do.
Yeah. All right, look, I mean, real quick, we've touched on this. Do you paint with broad strokes for just a second? Do you think that would you say that if you had to choose one or the other right now, like I said, broad strokes, the church and society as we sit here right now is continue to head towards more polarization or more unity, I guess. I guess the church is different. It could be different than the rest of society.
Yeah. I think between the pandemic and the civil rights movement in the year 2020 and 2021, 22, and 23, we have fractured along ideologies, belief systems. We're all scrambling to find our people who think the same way and want to belong in the same groups we belong in. I think we'll continue to ripple those things. Those ripples will still happen, like the tremors after an earthquake. The things won't settle down in 24, 25, and maybe even 26. But I don't know. Eventually, it's got to settle out. So,
you think.
Does that answer your question? Eventually, I think it'll settle out, but. Yeah. Until then, I think we just have to stay the course,
Yeah. I'm right there with you. I'll put you on the spot a little bit with that one, but we got to work it out for us, man.
We do.
Yeah.
We do, but it's good work. It's good work. I mean,
it's good work.
Yeah. It's hard, it's heavy, but it's good.
Yeah.
And it's good to not go alone.
Yeah. Yes, sir. And we love all you guys listening. Thank you for supporting us. Whether it's your first episode, whether you started with episode 1 3 years ago. It's been a time these last 3 years, John Mark. We've had a lot of amazing conversations. That's not a pat on our back. That's a pat on the backs of a lot of amazing people, guests that we've come on here. John Mark, thank you for, 2 years ago, agreeing to come on board along this journey. It's been fun.
Of course.
Doing this together, getting to know each other, hearing each other's perspectives on this stuff. And look, real quick, listeners, before we let you go, speaking of support, if you like anything you've heard on this episode or any other episode, or it's been helpful to you, or been helpful to somebody you know, please consider joining our Patreon. It's in the show notes. For as little as $1 a month, 1, 3, or 5 or more, you can support the show. And by support the show, I mean just give us money that we give away, or repair the occasional broken cable. But for now, we're just giving all the quote unquote profit, all the money away to causes that align with what we talk about here on the podcast. And that's going to kind of be a fluid thing of what we feel like is the best use of the money. And right now we're continuing to give it away to BIPOC college students to pay for the textbooks. And we're about to give away our second round of money. The first time was last semester. And it was really a joy to give away for almost $500. That was from you guys, from our current patrons, and then also people that just wanted to be part of it and matched it like on the day, which is really cool. So we're about to roll a little bit more of that out as we're starting a new semester on college campuses. So we're excited to do that. And we just love to have more money to bless and give away to these causes we're talking about on here. So please check out our Patreon if you've never heard about it, and join it again for as little as $1 a month. That might not sound like anything, but it adds up. Every little dollar literally does count and help. So, all right. Thank you guys for listening. John Mart, thank you for potting with me. The music you're listening to is by our guy, Dylan Dent, and our artwork was created by Ashley Bush. And we'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Peace.
The nightmare might scare you, no worse than reality. They hunt you by day, R.I.P. Ahmaud Arbery. Everybody got a time, but that's less than comforting. I hope I'm alive by the time they choose to comfort me. Mosquitoes in the vein, or leeches on my soul. This money on my mind is a fracture in my bones. You get crippled by continuing existence like a ghost. And they wonder why we drink, and they wonder why we smoke, and they wonder why we think that everything's a joke. I'm shocked that we can sleep, must be the thought of letting go.